What's up guys, AD back with another Destiny Child video, and in today's video everyone we are going to be overviewing the Ragna Break event guide for our current Ishimi Ragna Break event. So a huge thank you to Saturn for putting together this beautiful guide here, and a huge thank you as well to Fire Synth from the Destiny Child Reddit for translating this guide for us all to follow. So we'll be overviewing it quickly in today's video, as I'm sure many of you have been looking forward to this video, and it's been a few days since the raid has begun. So with all of that being said, let's get started with the first team here, which will be the Mech Commander low investment team. So we do have the team consisting of Mech Commander, our 3-star attacker, Anemone, Nubimona, Neptune, and Lupin. Now the leader skill that will be ran here will be Nubimona. So this will be a low investment team for you beginner players that would like to have some sort of impact in the raid, and you can definitely do so with this squad here. Now for the ignition recommendations, you should have Mech Commander fully ignited without a doubt, otherwise he won't do much at all against Ishimi. Now for Anemone here, it's recommended to ignite her to at least 3 stars, and for Lupin here, you should ignite her to full ignition. Now for the skill reserve here, you'll run Mech Commander on tap skill only. Anemone, if you don't tap into ignite her, you can run her on slide only, and if you do ignite her to the 3-star ignition, you can run her on slide tap. As for Nubimona here, you can run her on slide or slide tap. Slide tap if you are struggling with the survivability and would like some healing through the vampirism here from Nubimona's tap skill. As for Neptune, you run her on slide only, and for Lupin, we will run slide and 2 taps. As for the alternative options, you can run S33 or Chang'e over Anemone if you are missing Anemone herself. As for Neptune's replacements, you can run Rosanna over Neptune if you are missing her. As for Lupin, if you're missing her as well, you can run Yuna over Lupin. As for the highest attack stats, you'll want to have Mech Commander as your highest attack stats, followed by Anemone, and third here would be Neptune, and for the last two, you'll have Nubimona as well as Lupin. As for the drive order, you will drive Anemone into Neptune drive and end off with Lupin drive into Fever Time. As for the recommended puppets here for this team, everyone, you can view them here on screen if you would like to equip some to your units. As for the next team, everyone, we do have the Pepita starter team, which will be for more of you intermediate players that have invested into the amazing wood type attacker Polar Pepita. Now we do have the team composition consisting of Pepita, followed by Anemone, Nubimona, Neptune, and Lupin. So this team doesn't change too much compared to our Mech Commander team. The only main difference here would be the addition of Polar Pepita, as she is a massive upgrade, of course, compared to our 3-star attacker. As for the ignition recommendations here, of course, you'll want to fully ignite Pepita, and for Anemone and Lupin, compared to the last team, they will stay the same here as Anemone 3-star ignition and Lupin full ignition. As for the skill reserve, all of the units outside of Pepita are the same from the last team, but we do have Polar Pepita here should be ran on tap slide, and I almost forgot to mention you should run the leader skill of Polar Pepita for this team composition. As for the alternatives here, we do have quite a few differences in this area of this specific team, in which you can replace Polar Pepita with Ayane, our DOA collaboration exclusive attacker, or Daphnis. As for Anemone here, you can replace her with S33 or Chang'e, and for Nubimona here, we do have the replacement of Aurora if you do need to replace her as well. As for Neptune, we do have Rosanna or Grilla, can be ran in the slots of Neptune, and for Lupin here, of course, you can run Yuna. As for the highest attack stat order, you should have Pepita at the highest attack stat, followed by Anemone heading into Neptune, and for the last two, you'll have Nubimona as well as Lupin. As for the drive order here, you'll want to drive Anemone into Neptune drive and end off with Lupin. As for the recommended puppets, we do have them here on screen as well, showcasing a few uncommon and common puppets. As for the more serious and late game teams, we do have the first one here showcasing the Annie Ray team, which does consist of our new wood type supporter in Sarasu. As for the leader skill, you'll be running Sarasu's leader skill for this team composition, and this team comp does consist of Annie, followed by Sarasu, Scrooge, Grilla, and Yuna. As for the recommended ignition, we do have Annie at full ignition. She will be required to have full ignition for this team, as well as Sarasu should be fully ignited alongside Scrooge full ignition as well. As for Grilla, ignition isn't required for this character or suggested from Saturn. As for Yuna, we do have 4-star ignition is suggested. As for the skill reserve, we do have tap only on Annie. Sarasu with no ignition should run slide only. If you do happen to ignite Sarasu though, you should run her on slide and 2 taps. As for Scrooge, if you don't happen to ignite this character, you should run Newbie Mona instead, but if you do ignite your Scrooge, you should run her on slide tap tap. As for Grilla, no ignition should be ran on slide only, and for full ignition, you should run her on slide and 2 taps. As for Yuna here, you can either run her on slide tap or slide and 2 taps. As for the attack stat order, you should have Annie with the highest attack stat, followed by Scrooge, heading into Sarasu, and the last 2 attack stats can be Grilla as well as Yuna. As for the drive order here, you'll run Yuna drive into Grilla drive and end off with Sarasu into Fever Time. As for the recommended puppets here, we do have them showcased here on screen, in which these recommendations do consist of a rare puppets recommendation of Rudolph for some of our supporters. As for the final team composition here, everyone, from Saturn's guide, we do have the Pepita raid team. Now for the leader of this team, you will be running Maid Citri, and the team composition does consist of Pepita, Maid Citri, Scrooge, Elysian, and Yuna. As for the recommended ignition levels, you should have Polar Pepita fully ignited, Maid Citri at 3-star ignition, Scrooge fully ignited, Elysian fully ignited, and Yuna at 4-star ignition. As for the skill reserve, you will be running Pepita on tap slide, Maid Citri on slide if no ignition, and if you do happen to ignite her to 3 stars, you can run her on 1 slide and 2 taps. As for Scrooge here, no ignition, you should run Newbie Mona instead, and if you do have your Scrooge ignited, you can run her on slide tap tap. As for Elysian here, no ignition, you should run her on slide only, and full ignition will require 1 slide and 2 taps. As for Yuna, very similar to the Annie team, you should run her on either slide tap or slide and 2 taps. As for the recommended puppets here, everyone, we do have some rare recommendations for Pepita, Maid Citri, as well as Scrooge, and for Elysian and Yuna, we do have common and uncommon recommendations. As for the solo Carta recommendations, everyone, for this event, we do have the Attacker Solo Carta featuring Best Dresser, which would be the best Attacker Solo Carta, which does increase critical skill damage as well as restores HP when attacked. As for the next solo Carta, we do have End of a Long Wait, which would be the second best option, in which it does have HP and attack and increases max attack percentage plus. As for the final attacker Carta that is recommended, we do have In Sister's Arms, which does have the stats of attack and agility and increases weak point final blow percentage. As for the supporter Cartas, we do have our new solo Carta that was recently released as the top priority, being Between Purgatory and Hell, which does increase HP and attack as well as increases gauge charge speed plus, which is recommended for our supporters. As for the next best recommendation, we do have Rest in Peace, which does apply HP and agility for the bonus stats, and the effect is a debuff evasion percentage plus. As for the final solo Carta recommendation for our supporters, we do have Showtime, which is our universal debuff evasion plus solo Carta and also applies HP and defense. As for the final portion of this guide, everyone, we do have the equipment options that are recommended for your attackers. So if you would like to roll equipment options for your weapons, armor, and accessories for your attacker, either being Mech Commander, Polar Pepita, Annie, etc., you can feel free to follow these option recommendations here, and I'll be sure to zoom into them here on screen so you guys can pause the video and follow these recommendations from Saturn. But that'll pretty much do it for the Ishimi Ragna Break events guide overview here on the channel. So a huge thank you to Saturn for putting together this amazing guide for all of us to follow, as well as a huge thank you to Fire Synth from the Destiny Child global Reddits for translating Saturn's guide as well. So make sure to check out the guide in the description box below, as well as the Reddit's post linked down there as well. But before you go, also make sure to leave a like on this video if you guys did enjoy today's guide overview, as well as be sure to subscribe to the channel if you are enjoying the content, and of course check out channel memberships down below if you're interested in further supporting the channel. And a huge thank you to all of the members that have joined so far. But with all of that being said, I'll catch you all in the next Destiny Child video. As always, thank you all so much for watching.